Hey, everybody, Dr. Ellen here, the Midlife Whisperer. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife. And I have a question for you. Are you feeling strong? Because we have two amazing, badass women today who are going to help you strengthen your body, your mind, your heart, your spirit. Because this is October and it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I am talking with two incredible women. They are breast cancer thrivers, Vera Ventura and Sara Haas, who are going to inspire you to view suffering and challenges as opportunities to rise. Both of them were young and healthy and active and shocked when they learned that they had breast cancer. Rather than letting cancer destroy them, they faced their diagnosis and got stronger. So I want to talk a little bit about getting stronger. And I love the quote from Kelly Clarkson and also Nietzsche that says, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." You know, so often we at midlife focus on what's wrong with us. We focus on our weaknesses. We feel like we have to correct things. And I'm here to say, let's focus on our strengths. Actually, the psychological research really shows that focusing on your weaknesses absolutely doesn't work. You don't get better at what you're not good at. In contrast, when you focus on your strengths, when you know yourself and you work on your strengths and you will allow yourself to use them in new ways, particularly when you're challenged, they really do grow. And there's so much in kind of various religious and spiritual traditions about moving from strength to strength. It's actually a blessing in Judaism that says, you know, may you move from strength to strength and get stronger. There's a saying in Kundalini Yoga called Wahe Guru, which is just like, yay, God. When challenges happen, you're just like, okay, God, I got this thing. And you really moving from strength to strength is the key to empowerment. It's the key to be empowered from within, to summon those strengths. And so before we dive in and talk to our amazing guests, I want to do a little exercise. If you aren't driving, go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to think about where you were 6 months ago. Let's take a moment, think about it. What were you challenged with? What were you going through? And then think about where you were at 2 to 3 years ago, you know, around the time of the pandemic. Thinking about what strengths did I use to get through this challenging time that all of us face, that's that common humanity element of self-compassion. We all face so much during COVID. And think about maybe 5 years ago. Like, look at how much you've grown in the last 5 years. And then consider 10 years ago. So see your former self. This is a great way to actually transform in the present and the future, is actually look at the incredible strengths that you use to get you through. And when you have a chance, you may want to, after the podcast, grab a journal and write about it. Look at these various times in your life over the last decade or so. Look at how much you've grown. Think about what got me through. Now, personally, I was diagnosed with breast cancer 6 months ago to the day. It was my son's 21st birthday. I had just had my podcast for about, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks before getting diagnosed. And I really utilized my strengths to get me through. My top strengths and really my core values really are self-compassion, spirituality, and wellness. And self-compassion was so important. Self-compassion, I talk about a lot, but it really is a parachute and a life vest. It is a parachute so that when you are taking risks and doing things to grow and get stronger, you know you can pick yourself up. So you're more likely to take some risks, to get outside your comfort zone, to be resilient, which, you know, at midlife, let's face it, we get super stuck. And sometimes it's really hard to do what scares us, but it's also a life vest. So if you do have a health diagnosis, or if you get, you know, going through divorce, which I also went through about 5 years ago, then, you know, you've got this amazing ability to treat yourself the way you would a good friend. And so often over the last 6 months, I've just like put my, whoops, there I go, I'm hitting my mic there, put my hand on my heart and just was like, Ellen, this sucks, not to make the pain go away, but just because going through a health crisis or any crisis is so incredibly difficult. When you treat yourself like a good friend, you have such an amazing resource. So my self-compassion helped me through. my spirituality, trying to find meaning, right? Trying to find meaning when we're going through COVID or going through a health issue or going through a breakup with someone we love or death of a parent. So many things that we face at midlife. Spirituality can really help you to connect with your higher power, with God, whatever you call that, and also to find some meaning in what you're doing, and also maybe purpose, saying, hey, can I help other people through what I've been going through? And I found a lot of comfort in knowing I'm helping other people who are experiencing breast cancer. And then wellness is so important to me. And whenever I'm going through things, instead of saying, oh, I don't have time for self-care, I do the opposite. I say, God, I've got to double down on the self-care. And certainly through radiation, it was like nappy time every afternoon. And when I've been getting infusions for my breast cancer, making sure that I'm, staying hydrated, taking the time to care for myself, getting enough sleep, all of those things are so important. So take some time and think about, wow, look how far I've come. Really celebrate your successes and take a look at your strengths and see, okay, how do I use those strengths moving forward, and how can I get even stronger? So speaking of strengths, I am so excited to introduce you to Vera Ventura. She is a stage 4 metastasized breast cancer survivor, and she's got an amazing story. She went to Skidmore and then Harvard College, and she specializes in mindset coaching, non-toxic living, chemotherapy detox, nutritional healing, and bridging the gap between Western medicine and natural plant healing, which I absolutely love because I've been using both, getting the conventional stuff, but getting my vitamin C infusions and using my essential oils, which I'm sure she'll have a lot to talk about. And she is an avid meditator. She is a yoga practitioner, and she teaches numerous yoga classes and healing workshops. And she's also been in a 12-step program since 2004 that addresses all her addictions, whereby she is sober from all mood-altering substances, which led the way for a deep spiritual connection with the divine. In her spare time, as if she has spare time with all of that, she loves watching documentaries about history, traveling, and spending time with her husband, Joe, a filmmaker, and her 2 children, Alma, Vida, and Asher. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife, Vera. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it, and I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
Yes, I'm so grateful to meet you because I've come from your neck of the woods. You live in Somerville now, but I lived in Arlington for years and actually lived in Teal Square in Somerville for a while. My sister just moved from Somerville to Rhode Island. So I love that neck of the woods. And I was so fortunate to meet both our guests today through Linda Joy, who is creator of Aspire Magazine and all kinds of wonderful resources for women, who's going to be on our show in November. And she connected us because I wrote the foreword to a book that you wrote a chapter for. Can you tell us a little bit about that and about your cancer journey, which you discuss in the Midlife Mojo book?
Yeah, well, the book is about women in their midlife journey and profound experiences, or maybe not even that profound, but experiences. And I was called to write about what I've been through. And I had a journey before getting diagnosed with cancer, but this sort of propelled me in a whole new dimension. So that's what the book is about. It's going to be released November 15th. We're very excited about it. And yeah.
I haven't read your chapter, but I'm looking forward to it. So you got diagnosed really early. We both actually have something called the Brocca gene mutation. I
Right.
think you're an Ashkenazi Jew. I know I am. And it's actually 1 in 40 women of Ashkenazi Jewish descent actually have this gene, which if you do have it, the mutation actually increases your risk of breast cancer as well as a whole host of other cancers. So I know this was a surprise to you. Can you tell us that you were diagnosed early? Tell us about the diagnosis and your journey so far.
Sure, of course. Um, so yes, it's prevalent in Ashkenazi women. However, women who are not Ashkenazi also can inherit the gene. And the person who made it like really famous was Angelina Jolie. And she wrote a op-ed piece about how people should be tested for BRCA. Women should be tested for BRCA and should have the option for prophylactic surgery to remove breast and ovaries, because you also have a higher rate of ovarian cancer. So for some people, that's their first exposure to learning about the genetic components of breast cancer. But there's a lot of different genetic mutations, and we're still sort of trying to understand about them. When my mother passed away from breast cancer, she didn't know what kind of genetic breast cancer she didn't have. When my father passed away from pancreatic cancer, he didn't know anything about this because it's all this genetic testing is new. And how would you know if you don't have a predisposition or you just didn't know? So in my case, I had no idea, right? I had no idea until I found a lump, and I was breastfeeding my daughter. And that's why it's really important, the whole activism around like, check your breast, check your breast. By the way, did you check your breast? Did you check your breast? And they say, start young, like 8, even 16, 17-year-old girls should just start getting into the habit of feeling it. Was I a heavy breast checker? No, I wasn't, to be honest. I was constantly breastfeeding my babies.
So I was
constantly around my breast, but I wasn't someone who was feeling it, except when I went to go, to get a pap smear or something, or go into my general doctor. But I couldn't deny the fact that I had a big lump. And at first I went to the doctor. They were like, oh yeah, it's probably, it wasn't a specialist. I think he said, yes, it's probably a blocked milk duct, which is what I thought it was. So that's why it's important, ladies. If you think it's a blocked milk duct, please still get it checked out. And then I went a second time because I started breastfeeding on the opposite side. Well, I'm like, well, I guess that one is not going to work out. Let me try this side. But it still stayed pretty solid, whatever it was. I didn't think in a minute it was cancer. Like in a second, in a millisecond, it did not even cross my mind. Again, I was the pinnacle of health, right? I had joined a 12-step program when I was 24. I completely let go of processed flour, sugar, anything mood altering, alcohol, drugs. I was a yoga teacher. I meditate daily. I mean, there was, it was not in my conception.
It wasn't on my vision board either. I totally get you there.
So it was so not, I didn't even think about it until one day I went to go see my friend, and she had a tumor, and she was doing everything natural to help with this tumor. And I said, I feel something here. She said, you should get it checked out. I was like, no. She's like, you should get it checked out. So it was always friends kind of like pushing me to do things because I'm very like, no, I'm good. I'm going to just take care of it myself. I'm all set. Thank you very much. So at the end, the second time I went back and they said, okay, let's order the mammogram and all that. And then it was, through the mammogram where they smush your little boobie into like a chicken cutlet. And you're like, what? How is this okay? And then it was, discovered or whatever through that process that there were 2 masses on both sides. So it was bilateral, and they don't say it's cancer in that moment, but they give you that, you got to wait. You got to give that waiting time. And at this time, my husband was in Saudi Arabia. So it was just me and my children. And when they called me in to get the results, right? Like I was going to get some sort of award. I did bring my children, which I don't recommend bringing your children when you're finding out you have a diagnosis like cancer. But I think I brought them as a way that I would maintain who I was through it, no matter what.
Yeah, I love that too. That's a really important point, though. Whatever you're going through, I found myself, you need to maintain that sense of self when you're going through it, because the first place you go is this fear tunnel where like everything kind of starts to spin and like, who am I? And you become identified as a breast cancer patient rather than like you're still Vera, you're still that same self. So I totally understand why you might have had your kids.
Right, exactly. So then, they stick you in a room with somebody, and it's not necessarily a doctor, it could be like a nurse practitioner, and that's who delivers the news. At least for me it was, okay? And then of course it's just like, and I think that is the hardest time in this cancer journey. I don't want to say my journey because my cancer, I don't want to own it. I still don't like to say my diagnosis. I don't like to add my to it. I just say the journey, whatever. So I think that's the hardest time because then you really don't know what stage you are. You don't know, like, if you're going to drop dead tomorrow. You just have no idea what's going to happen. So that is the most vulnerable time. And did I have an emotional response? Of course I did. I think if I didn't, I would be a robot. So I cried, but I didn't call, like, who do you talk to in that moment? So my husband was in Saudi Arabia. I didn't talk to my husband. I actually called my sponsor in my 12-step program, because that has been a surrogate mother for me, because my own family of origin is very, has a lot of dysfunction. So I called somebody who would really support me. And then I also called another fellow who had gone through her own diagnosis as well. So that's important, to start to sort of, create this beautiful nest, no matter what you're going through, whether it's cancer or whatever, any in life, you should have your community lined up. So when proverbial shit hits the fan, which it does, because that's life, that you have someone you can call and say, this is what's going on. And I just let the tears fall, and the person listened on the other line, and I felt that I had the support, and that I was reminded that God is in charge. So whatever you believe in, and someone listening to this call, that might be a very uncomfortable word to hear, the word God. So whatever it is, something greater than yourself, like the universal force, Mother Nature, your cat, anything that's greater than you, as long as you are not the center of everything and the ego is not so big, everything becomes more into perspective. So having that awareness really allowed me, for the next chapter, of like the uncovery of like this whole, and that's what it is. It's like a book, right? And every page, every chapter, you're just learning a little bit more, And you're like Inspector Gadget, sort of researching and understanding, okay, what is this? And what is this? And what is it? And what is it? So back to your initial question about the Brocca, BRCA1, right? So the doctors were like, very strange. You are really healthy. You have bilateral. You're not even 40 yet. You should really get genetic testing. However, you still have to wait with this time, because genetic testing takes weeks and weeks and weeks, right? But you're still left with this diagnosis, right?
Yeah, I had the same thing. I actually found out I had it, and then I talked to my brother, and he had done 23andMe. He hadn't done the Brocca piece, but he was able to just get that quickly, and he had it. And so you're right. You have to make, and it's interesting, because the oncological world, this whole world of people who are looking to combat that cancer, aren't really that interested in what will happen down the road with another cancer. I found that was a real, one of my biggest difficulties, is trying to communicate that I have to keep my level of wellness and my toxicity. My well is up, my toxicity low, so I don't get another cancer, because I've chosen to keep my breasts at this point. So that was, yeah, it's confusing. You've got this hefty diagnosis, and on top of it, determining what are you going to do in terms of genetic testing.
Exactly. So at that point, they order the genetic test. So I go to the hospital, and how cool, in this hospital, they had free acupuncture. Just want to make a side note of that.
That is cool. And we're starting to do that here at UVM. They actually are getting an acupuncturist in where they do the chemo now. And it's so, complementary is so amazing for both treatment as well as to mitigate a lot of the side effects of treatment.
Rarity. That was a rarity, but notable. So then, they give you this like sheet that you fill out, and it's like Island Pacificer, Native American, Ashkenazi Jew, and I'd never actually filled out any sort of form that I needed to specify I was Ashkenazi Jew. I'm actually half Sephardic and half Ashkenazi. So Ashkenazi, if your listeners are wondering what does that mean, it's not just a fun word to say. Jews from Eastern Europe. Right? Jews from back in the day who originated Eastern Europe. Initially, everyone was from Middle East, but then they kind of spread out in diaspora. Sephardic Jews gravitated more towards the Iberian Peninsula, Turkey, Spain, Morocco. Those are what you would call a Sephardic Jew. So I am a mixture of Sephardic and Ashkenazi. All the cancer that exists is on my Sephardic side. No cancer exists really on my Ashkenazi. So that's interesting. I still filled it out, right? Of course. It did turn out that I was positive And I must say that 3 weeks of waiting, you are like a little bit of a cuckoo bird in your head because you don't know if it's genetic or if it's been something you're doing. And you're like, it's the fish. I know it's the fish. Oh, I know it. I know it's the water. Oh, I know it's that stress from that job I had 5 years ago. So there's all sorts, and it's like, again, the genetic testing and getting the confirmation, sadly to say, it was a little bit of a relief, a little bit. Still, I'm still very active in all those areas of prevention, but I must say it was a nice little gift of relief. Not to say that that was any consolation prize, knowing that I have a way higher genetic predisposition, but in any event,
So
yes.
then so then you had a double mastectomy and chemo and all the things, and then
So first was the chemotherapy. However, you had to convince me to do chemotherapy. It wasn't like an innate, like, yes, I will do anything you say. It was not like that. It took a lot of convincing. I also didn't want to lose my hair. I had really long curly hair. It's starting to grow back. I mean, pretty nicely. But yes, I didn't want to lose my hair. I found out about the cold cap. So if your viewers don't know about, or listeners don't know about it, cold cap can freeze your hair follicle and save some of your hair during the chemotherapy process. The chemotherapy I had has 100% hair loss. So the fact that I could save some of my hair was remarkable. And it took a lot of convincing, but finally I did decide to do the chemotherapy. And then after that, I did the double mastectomy. It was also during the pandemic, so there was a lot of initially support, with a friend visiting and people,
wow,
showing
that's
up
really
and
doubly hard.
bringing me food. But then it slipped into pandemic mode, like the beginning of the pandemic, and everyone was afraid of their own shadow. So anything to do with like hospitals or, but I still had to get treatment. So initially I was going to have a deep reconstruction, which is where they take the fat from your abdomen and place it into your to make boobs. So you don't have to have implants. So it's actually all natural. However, because of the pandemic, that was considered elective surgery. So then, therefore, I had them separated. So initially, I did the double mastectomy, then waited months and months, and then eventually did the deep reconstruction.
And then it metastasized to your brain.
So yeah, so then after chemotherapy, they give you a little certificate and they're like, congratulations, you are amazing, and you're done. Ring a bell. We didn't have a bell. I got a certificate. It's like a diploma. It's like graduating. And
Easier than
then
Harvard, though, I'm sure.
and then they opened it up and chopped. So they take your tumor and they chop it up. It's like hibachi. No, I'm just kidding. They don't hibachi it, but they chop it up. They dissect it and check to see what's going on. It turned out that my diagnosis, the diagnosis had changed from HER2 negative to HER2 positive. So that meant extra chemotherapy. And what I learned about chemotherapy, what I learned about HER2 positive is this would have been like a death sentence years and years ago. And most likely this is what my grandmother had. It is so hard to treat. But now they have these miracle drugs that make it make it so you can live. So I think the immense amount of gratitude I had throughout this journey is something I'm so blessed to have, because I never felt connected to this whole idea of hashtag cancer sucks or hashtag fuck cancer. I felt that it was really important to imbue all this with positive energy and light. So my gratitude to know that it had switched and then there was a way that I could actually target that was amazing. So I was also on chemotherapy while I was also in treatment to get the deep reconstruction and the double mastectomy. So I think, should we wait to talk a little bit more about do you have any questions about that?
We have a couple of minutes. So, I mean, no, I have a good sense of it. I want to get a little bit more to how you use mindfulness and yoga too. And I saw these wonderful pictures. If you want to check Vera out on Instagram and your website, you've got some amazing pictures of you doing yoga poses, getting your magic back.
Oh,
I kind of would love to know how you kind of got back to being yourself.
Yeah. So after the break, I'm going to tell you guys about how it metastasized. But before that, regarding meditation, regarding yoga, I never stopped practicing through the whole journey. So every morning I would still do my practice of meditation, 30 minutes, even if I had stitches and bandages. It doesn't matter. Like, I could still sit and be mindful. And do I listen to music or no? I just sit and observe my breath and observe what's going on in my head. And that way you can see, like, oh, there's fear, or there's anxiety, or there's stress. And the whole idea is to just melt that away so there's no evidence of stress in the body. And that's easier said than done sometimes. But stress, it causes inflammation, and that when you want to avoid disease, that's the first place to go, is reducing stress. So that was always a standard, and that was not negotiable. As far as yoga, there's only so much you can do once you've had surgery. So sometimes it would be just little baby steps, like maybe taking a walk, or bending forward. But anything that revolved around heart openers, which is opening up the chest, would be avoided. But I did what I could. So I would bounce back really, like, efficiently after all the surgeries. So does that answer your question regarding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me, I know that there was a moment I had where I had been diagnosed and I hadn't had anything done yet, but I was in a yoga class and I just was like, my body still works great. There's this issue going on in my left breast, but the rest of me works great. But we have just a minute. I'm just curious. I was going to come back and we are going to be talking with Sara and sharing her story.
Of course.
How did you reclaim your magic? How did you use your strengths to kind of, because you're obviously very magical, very spiritual, very connected with goddess energy. How did you get your magic back?
I don't know. I don't think the magic ever left.
So how did you maintain that magic?
Again, I think it's that foundational connection to a higher power, and that belief in that that there's something greater out there than just me, that there's so much more. And then gratitude, like constant gratitude, that there was never a moment that I wasn't grateful for the experience of the blessings that I was given.
So looking at the positives, using your strength of your spirituality and also all of your knowledge around natural health and well-being, as well as just connecting to all that is and seeing that, you know what do I have control over and what don't I have control over, which is we certainly have, regardless, we have control over our mindset and we have control over some of the actions that we take. So thank you for sharing your story. We're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we are going to be talking with Sara Haas, who is also a breast cancer survivor who has a different story and I think a different take. And she's also going to be asking Vera questions. So stick with us. We're going to give you more inspiration to use your strengths to overcome your challenges. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Dr. Ellen here, the Midlife Whisperer. Thank you so much for listening. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, please leave me a review. Tell me what you like about the show, the kind of guests you'd like to hear. I love to read your feedback. And before the break, we were talking with Vera Ventura about her breast cancer journey. And now we are going to be talking with Sara Haas, who is a women's weight release and body love coach. She's an integrative nutrition health coach, a certified personal trainer, and a podcast host and speaker. And I had the privilege of being on her podcast, which actually launches today. And she draws on her educational and personal experience as a 50-year-old single mom and breast cancer survivor to walk alongside midlife women to guide and support them to become healthy, vibrant, and unapologetically confident. Her holistic approach to creating overall health integrates nutrition, body movement, self-care, self-compassion, and body love to empower her clients to step into the sexy, authentic, joyful life they deserve. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife, Sara. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. And I want to thank you also just for bringing this message to people and having this conversation, because it's so important and it's something that so many women need to hear.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate too that like early detection is so important. I was super lucky. I have my mammograms every year, and then I also had a breast density, and mine was discovered so early. So yeah, get your mammogram. Yes, your breast does get a little bit like a cutlet, as Vera was saying. It's like a chicken cutlet, you get squished, but it really is not a hard ordeal. I love what one of my clients does is every time she has a mammogram, she treats herself to something fun afterwards. So get that mammogram, then hang out with a girlfriend, take yourself out to lunch, buy yourself a new outfit, just do something to sort of reward yourself. So I know that you have a question for Vera. We were talking about that during the break. So if you want to go ahead and ask Vera, Sara has a question for you.
Yes, absolutely. So right before the break, you had mentioned briefly that you had the cancer metastasize to your brain. And that is very scary. And that's a fear that I have I'm sure anyone with cancer has. The cancer that I had was stage 2A, and it is gone. I'm cancer free, but I grapple with that fear all the time. The fear of it coming back, the what ifs. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you do to deal with that fear?
Great question. Thank you so much. It was never even in my conception until it started happening, and I lost control of my body, and I was not able to walk, and I passed out, and I basically was deemed unconscious. So I think it's one of those situations where you can meet it with fear, but in this situation, it was so physical. It was so physical, and I was in so much pain from it that it deemed me at one point unconscious. So I didn't have any time to expect it. Does that make sense? Like I didn't have time to sit in any fear because I had the reaction so quickly, and then I had to thank you God it was removed. But once it was removed, then I had to regain coordination on my left side. And as a yoga teacher, you can imagine how humbling that was to learn how to balance and move on the left side. And I went to rehab. That being said, early detection, full body scanning is the best way to go in that situation, just to know if you're clear, because most chemotherapy does not pass the blood-brain barrier. And I'm a huge advocate now, and I take every day, I take glutathione because it is the body's most powerful antioxidant. And that actually does cross the blood-brain barrier, and it's a way that I feel really confident with my own prevention. I also do use the essential oils and, of course, all the stress reduction that I mentioned. But on a daily basis, I feel really secure in the choices that I've made. I'm also plant-based. I don't eat meat anymore, or dairy for the most part. So those daily choices every day, Sara, I hope that answered your question.
It does, because I think a big part of the fear and just what is so hard about having cancer is the loss of control. And anything that you can do, and I found this all along the journey, anything that you can do to give yourself a sense of control really calms you down. And, whether it's your nutrition or your exercise or meditation, mindfulness, whatever you can do, treatments or alternative therapies, it's very helpful to have some things that you do have control over.
It starts with breathing. I find that, when I feel fear, I have those, those fears that it's coming back. I do, a lot of what Vera was saying of knowing like, okay, well, hey, God's in charge, right? If God wants to take me out, I don't think that this is my time. I really want to be healthy at 100. I'm secure in that, I can, like you said, I can do what I can do. And keeping your your parasympathetic, your rest and digest nervous system. You have control of that. It can be as simple as taking a breath or two, doing some breath work, doing some meditation, taking a walk in nature, cuddling your pet. There is so much that you can do. And it's so important because the minute you get that diagnosis, you get this in this tunnel of fear, this absolute tunnel. And you need also that support of other people who can pat you on the back and tell you it's going to be okay. So let's talk a little bit about your story. Briefly, Sara, can you tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and how you got through it?
Yes, absolutely. So my diagnosis happened in 2019 and it came out of nowhere for me. I had almost no family history, no experience with breast cancer. I was 47. I was doing all the things. I'm a health coach. I'm a fitness trainer. I was teaching classes at the gym, eating well, taking care of my mental health, doing yoga, meditating, all the things. And I never in a million years imagined myself as a cancer patient. But with my story, I had fibrocystic breasts or dense breast tissue. And since this happened to me, I have talked to so many women who also have dense breasts. I thought
too.
it was rare. I thought that this was, just very few people had it.
And just to interrupt you briefly, dense breasts are a double whammy. First of all, you get a lot more false negatives. So people who it's harder to read the mammogram, and also having dense breasts puts you at a greater risk of getting breast cancer.
Yes. Yes. And what I regret about that is not educating myself a little more. I asked the doctor, what causes this? Why are mine dense? And they said, oh, we don't know. Maybe it's because you drink too much caffeine. Well, I drink 1 cup of coffee a day, so that wasn't it. And they said you do have an increased risk of breast cancer. And the very first mammogram I had, they had me do an ultrasound afterwards because the mammogram shows if there are any lumps or any dense places, but it doesn't show whether it's solid or liquid. And so they had me do an ultrasound afterwards, which showed all of them were liquid filled, which means non-cancerous. And subsequent mammograms that I had, they did not do the ultrasound afterwards. They said, oh, it still looks fibrocystic. You're fine. Go on your way. And before I was diagnosed, I actually had a mammogram 1 month before.
Wow.
And they told me everything was fine. I didn't question it. It was exactly what I wanted to hear. I went on my way. And with the fibrocystic breasts, I had lumps all the time, lots and lots of lumps. There were big ones, there were small ones. They would grow, they would shrink. So it was always changing. So I would do breast exams, but I had no idea what was going on in there. And so I wasn't worried about it. And I had a lump that was really bothering me. And I kept having this persistent, like, you should go check this out. A little niggling, a little, intuition that was saying, your mammogram came out okay, but like, this is bothering you. And they had told me that they could drain the fluid if one of them got too uncomfortable because they would grow. And, some of them would be like even golf ball sized. And so I was thinking about, okay, maybe I should go get this fluid drained out because it's really bothering me. It's getting uncomfortable, but I put it off because it was out of pocket cost and, high deductible insurance, blah, 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 blah. Looking back, I wish that I had done more research and also advocated for myself in insisting on the ultrasound every single year after I had the mammogram.
Yeah, I got the letter to get the breast density, and I was like you. I'm a dietitian. I'm a board certified health and wellness coach. I was like, I had no family history, and I kind of threw it in a drawer, and then COVID hit, and then I finally got it. My mammogram was negative in October, and then I was diagnosed in April. So yeah, I think it's so important that we're talking about this because it's something that's very new. This whole breast density piece to it.
Yeah. So I went and, had the ultrasound because I was going to get that, what I thought was a fluid filled cyst, drained. And that is when they discovered that it was, in fact, a solid mass and it was cancerous and that it had spread to at least one lymph node. And they later, after more testing, realized that it had spread to several lymph nodes, but nowhere else. So I was considered stage 2A. And I did get the genetic testing. And fortunately, unlike you, Dr. Ellen, and you, Vera, I did not test positive for any of the gene mutations. So I was worried about that because I have a daughter, I have a sister, and I was young. So I went and got all the testing, and that was a big relief. But I will say that when I got the diagnosis over the phone, because I called, because I was kind of like, I want to know, they did this ultrasound, they did this biopsy, what's going on. I hadn't heard anything. And I called and she told me over the phone and then had me come in. And you were saying earlier that it's so important to have that community around you, those people that can support you. And, I immediately called my mom, and I didn't even say what was wrong. I was like, Mom, oh my God. And she went, I'll be right there. And she hung up.
Oh, wow.
But she lives 45 minutes away. And I also called my partner, who is a teacher, and he was at school and couldn't leave right away. But I was like, I need you. And he's like, okay. And he immediately, but in the meantime, I had a good 45 minutes to an hour by myself. And first thing I did was go outside, and I wrapped my arms around this tree that's in my yard because I needed something. I needed somebody. And the nature has always been a very calming presence for me. And a tree with its roots and its strength and its being so solid and stable just really helped calm my nervous system. And that was something, Vera, you were saying that it's so important to constantly be doing that because stress exacerbates everything, whether it's cancer, whether it's, heart disease. It's bad for your health.
Is at the root of everything.
It is.
But we do need some stress, but when we have too much of it, it creates inflammation everywhere in the body, and that inflammation leads to dis-ease. So the tree hugging, and then consequently, I think we had talked previously. So you did all the things: chemo, immunotherapy, radiation. You had a double mastectomy, and I'm wondering, how did you get through all of that? Especially being a single mom. And how old was your child or children at this point?
My kids were both in high school, so they were a little bit older. Wait, no, my son was in middle school and my daughter had just started high school.
So teens are hard.
Teens. Yeah. Teens. And that was really hard.
Pandemic.
Yeah. I had my mastectomy in March of 2020, which was right when the pandemic hit. Yes. So I had a year's worth of chemotherapy. I had 20 rounds, lost all my hair, all of that. And I also had 25 rounds of radiation. And then I had a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction. And the reconstruction was pretty rough. I had what's called a lat flap surgery, where they literally cut your latissimus muscle from your back, not all of it, but a piece of it on each side, and then wrap it around to the front, which is what holds your breast implants in place. Because if not, you just have an empty pocket of skin and there's nothing to hold it. So yeah, the treatments were brutal. And I attribute my good health going in to part of what helped me survive it, because a lot of people, if they aren't in good health, cannot tolerate the treatments and have to end treatment early because their body just can't take it. So I was so grateful that I was strong and healthy going in and that I was able to tolerate all the treatments. And I made sure to do physically whatever I could, which sometimes was strolling out to the mailbox and back. sometimes it would be a little walk around the block, light stretching. And that I also did a lot of like detoxing because I was getting the chemotherapy, and I also had some conflict and trepidation about going through that because the idea of pumping your body with chemicals, it's just the thought of it. I've avoided chemicals my whole life, eating organic, and and then putting poison into my body was a hard thing to come to terms with. But I also had the HER2 positive, which, like Vera said, they have amazing drugs for that particular type of cancer that are extremely effective. And HER2 positive 6 years ago or so was the worst. You did not want to, it's only 20% of the breast cancers are HER2 positive.
Well,
So,
fortunately, the immunotherapy, actually, I'm going through right now, and the immunotherapy, if you're listening, and I mean, chemotherapy definitely targets all your cells and the fast growing cells, which is why you lose your hair. You have taste issues. The cells that turn over really fast get targeted. But I felt yucky the first and second times I had Herceptin. I had it a couple days ago, and I felt totally fine. So it uses your body's own immune system to target the cancer cells and basically attack them and keep them from growing and proliferating. So it is an absolutely amazing thing. So you're radiating health. Both of you look so amazing when I see you now and on social. I'm curious, how did the cancer change you and make you stronger?
well, I really had to develop an eternal perspective immediately, almost immediately when I received the diagnosis. I'm a very spiritual person. I do believe in a higher power and a benevolent universe. And I always tell myself, everything happens for me, not to me. And I believe that we're put on this earth for our souls to teach lessons and to learn lessons and to grow stronger. And I had been through a divorce several years earlier after 17 years of marriage. And once I came out the others, it was such a, it's, if anyone's been divorced, it's a really tough thing to do, especially after that long and also having 2 kids. So I knew once I had come out the other side, I was so much better for it. I was so much happier. I was so much more authentic. And I drew on that to teach me, okay, this is another situation that I'm meant to be in. And I may not understand it. I may never understand it, but this is a place that I'm meant to be. And it is for the greater good. And, that really helped me get through it. And the other thing was, I really slowed down and got mindful and checked in with my body, which was something that I was guilty of not doing, even though I preach it. And I, I don't always practice what I preach because I'm a type A perfectionist. I'm always busy. I have a lot of anxiety. And I stopped and I said, okay, so I'm thinking about writing a book. And if I do, it's going to be called "This is What My Tumor Told Me," because that was sort of the message in my head. What is this cancer trying to tell me? And the message was, you need to slow down. You have to slow down. This is what is affecting your health, and you're not getting what you want out of life because of this busyness and this anxiety.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. I had to really grapple with my workaholism, which I've managed to get under control for the most part. And thank you for sharing your strength and story and how you dealt. We have a couple minutes left, and I'd love to have Vera ask you a question. So Vera, let me get you to unmute if you have a question for Sara.
Sara, thank you so much. That was so powerful. It's like, what can this cancer teach me, right? What do I need? What do I need to learn from it? I love that perspective. Something that you and I both totally agree on is that importance of detoxification, which was probably the only reason I agreed to actually do chemotherapy, because I knew that there were solid ways that I could detox. That is actually what I help my clients with immensely, is how to detox from cancer during and after. So I'd love to know from you, what was the one thing? I know you mentioned taking breaks in between, but if there's a physical, like actually something tangible that someone can take with them for their a journey afterwards or during that you recommend for detox, getting those chemicals out of the system, what would you recommend?
So I did several things. First of all was green juice. I made my own organic green juice, kale, cucumbers, lemon. I had, a whole mix of really great stuff that was super powerful antioxidant nutrients. I drank that every day. Also, I took detox baths with Epsom salts and baking soda. And I also would go for extra IV fluids after every chemotherapy. I would go for 2 or 3 days in a row, even though I hated to drag myself back there, but that helped flush it out. So I would say those 3 things. I also got Reiki and sacral therapy. Oh, and walking. Walking was huge for stimulating the lymphatic system and getting things moving and flowing and visualizing those toxins just coming out of my body.
I love that. I have added to that dry skin brushing, oil pulling, tons of saunas, both traditional and infrared, and then certainly supplementation. I supplement with citrus peel, pectin, modified citrus pectin, and then also chlorella, and then certainly green juice, which I'm fortunate to have a humongous garden. So thank you both for sharing. It has been such an honor to listen to you and to hear your journey. And I hope that those of you who've been listening have been inspired by Sara and Vera. Vera, where can people reach you? Your website. It's the best place.
Thank you. Well, I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok at Voracious Healing Instagram, at Breast Cancer Goddess TikTok. And then my website is breastcancergoddess.com.
breastcancergoddess.com. I have been there. Your videos are incredibly amazing, and you have a fantastic sense of humor, and I love to watch you dance. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.
And Sara, where can people find you?
My website is sarahhaaswellness.com, and you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Sara Haas Wellness.
And it's SarahHaas. So 2 A's and 2 A's and an H after Sara. So thank you both so much. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next week. I appreciate you being here. If you want to reach out to me, it's themidlifewhisperer.com. That's themidlifewhisperer.com. Take care.